After a hearty dinner, the conversation inevitably turned to ladies of the night. For what else, pray tell, is there for men to discuss in purely male company? And a most extraordinary thing once happened to me, interjected one of our number. And this is what he told us. Last year, on a particularly dank evening, a profound melancholy suddenly descended upon me. A crushing, clinging despair that drains the soul of all its vigor and drives a man to distraction. A familiar feeling? I was sitting in my lodges in utter solitude and was acutely aware that if this continued, I would be overcome by an attack of utter dejection, the very kind that leads one into a blind alley and pushes him toward the most terrible of acts, especially when such fits become frequent visitors. I threw on my overcoat and spilled out onto the street, not knowing myself where I was going or why. I reached the boulevards and began wandering past near-empty cafes. A cold drizzle was falling, the fine, persistent kind that soaks not only your coat, but your very thoughts. This was not the refreshing downpour that cascades from the heavens and drives breathless pedestrians under archways. No, this was an icy mist that seeped relentlessly from the clouds, coating one's clothes in a penetrating dampness that chilled you to the bone. What was to be done? I paced back and forth, vainly trying to devise a place to kill a couple of hours, and for the first time discovered with bitterness that finding amusement on a Parisian evening is no easy task. In the end, I decided to head for the Folies Bergère, a sort of cover market where women of easy virtue ply their trade. The main hall was deserted. Along the horseshoe-shaped gallery loitered only the most commonplace individuals, whose lowly origins were evident in everything. In their gait, their attire, the cut of their hair and beards, the style of their hats, and even their complexion. Only rarely did a man flit by of whom one could say with certainty that he had washed that day, washed thoroughly, and that his garments resembled a proper suit. And the women were all the same tiresome creatures, dreadful, worn out, importunate. They paraded with their furtive gait, wearing a stupid, haughty expression they adopt for reasons known only to themselves. I told myself that not a single one of these bloated creatures, corpulent rather than portly, flabby and yet scrawny, with belly sagging like those of monks and legs like a dachshund's, was worth the single louis d'or she so laboriously haggled for, after starting with a demand of 5 for propriety's sake. But suddenly my gaze fell upon one who seemed rather pretty to me. She was no longer in her first youth, but was still attractive, spirited, with a spark in her eye. A foolish impulse struck me. I stopped her and, without further ado, struck a bargain for the entire night. I had no desire to return to my cursed home, to the place where only solitude awaited me, and I preferred instead the company and embraces of this young woman. I followed her. She lived in a large, an absolutely enormous house on the Rue des Martyrs. The stairwells were plunged into darkness. The gas lamps had already been extinguished. Displeased, I hobbled after the rustling silk of her skirt, striking wax matches, feeling for the steps with my feet, and stumbling. On the 5th floor, she stopped. "So you're staying till morning?" she said, locking the door behind us. But of course, we agreed on it. All right, Kitty. I just wanted to be sure. Wait here. I'll be back in a moment." And she left me in utter blackness. I heard one door close, then another, and then I thought I heard the murmur of a muffled conversation. I grew wary. The thought of a pimp pricked my mind. But my fists are like sledgehammers, and my shoulders are broad. Well then, we shall see who gets the better of whom, I thought. I stood there, straining to catch every sound. Behind the wall, Someone was moving, walking, stepping cautiously, almost silently. Then another door creaked, and I thought I could distinctly make out whispering. She returned, holding a lit candle. "You may come in," she said. This signified that she was now taking possession of her property. I crossed the dining room in which, it was clear, no one had ever dined, and found myself in a standard courtesan's room. A furnished cubbyhole with rep curtains and a crimson silk bedspread, which was dotted with dubious stains like the hide of a leopard. "Make yourself comfortable, Kitty," she purred. I surveyed the room with distrust, but found nothing to cause alarm. She nimbly undressed and settled into the bed, while I still stood in my overcoat. She burst out laughing. "What's the matter with you?" Turned into a pillar of salt. "Come on now, get a move on." I lay down beside her. 5 minutes later, I was seized by a wild desire to dress and flee. But that very despair which had driven me from my home now chained me to that bed, robbing me of all will, and I could not move. I remained, though I was filled with revulsion for this bed of common use. The sensual allure I had perceived in her under the theater's chandeliers had evaporated, and now, lying beside me, was the most commonplace strumpet, whose indifferent, dutiful kisses tasted of garlic. I struck up a conversation with her. "Have you lived here long?" I asked. 6 months now. It was the 15th of January. "And before that, where did you stay?" "On the Rue Clausel. But the concierge made trouble for me, played all sorts of nasty tricks, and I grew sick and tired of it all." And she launched into an endless narrative about how that concierge had poisoned her life with gossip. Suddenly, I detected a movement very close to us. First, a sigh, then a faint but distinct rustle, as if someone were fidgeting on a seat. I sat up in bed and asked, "What was that?" She replied firmly and calmly, "Don't fret, Kitty, it's the neighbor. The partitions here are paper thin. You can hear everything as if we were in the same room. What wretched little hovels these are. The walls might as well be made of cardboard." I was too lazy to get up, so I buried my head in the pillow, and we began to chat again. A foolish curiosity took hold of me, the kind that compels all men to interrogate these creatures about their downfall, as if to lift the veil on their first sin, hoping to find in them some glimmer of a long-lost innocence, and perhaps to fall in love with a girl who might flicker to life in that fleeting memory, summoned by talk of their former purity. And so I began to ply her with questions about her first lovers. I knew she would lie. No matter. Perhaps, in that heap of falsehoods, I might find something genuine and touching. "Well, tell me, who was he?" "A gentleman. He used to go boating near us." "I see. Well, go on. Tell me more. Where did you live then?" "In Argenteuil." "And what did you do there?" "I worked in a restaurant." "Which one?" "The Sailor on Land." "Do you know it?" "Know it? Why, of course. That's Bonanfin's place." "The very one. And how did this oarsman of yours sweep you off your feet?" "Well, I was making his bed, and he took advantage of me." Here I suddenly recalled the theory of a friend of mine, a doctor, an observant man with a philosophical turn of mind. His practice in a large hospital brought him daily into contact with unmarried mothers and fallen women, and he had made a thorough study of all the shameful incidents and misfortunes that befall poor women who become the prey of some brazen male, swaggering about with a well-lined purse. I was far too lazy to rise, so I buried my face in the pillow, and we fell to chatting once more. I was seized by that foolish curiosity which compels all men to pry from these wretched creatures the story of their downfall, to lift the veil on their first sin, as if hoping to find in them some lingering glimmer of a lost innocence, and perhaps to fall in love with the girl who might flicker to life in that fleeting memory, summoned by talk of their former purity. And so I began to ply her with questions about her first lovers. I knew she would lie. No matter. Perhaps, within that heap of falsehoods, I might unearth something genuine and touching. Well, tell me, who was he? A gentleman. He used to go boating where I lived. Ah, well, go on. Tell me more. Where did you live then? In Argenteuil. And what did you do there? I worked in a restaurant. Which one? The Sailor on Land. Do you know it? Know it? Why, of course. That's Bonanfin's place. The very one. And how did this oarsman of yours sweep you off your feet? Why, when I was making his bed, he took me by force. At that, I suddenly recalled the theory of a friend of mine, a doctor, an observant man with a philosophical turn of mind. His practice in a large hospital brought him daily into contact with unwed mothers and fallen women, and he had made a thorough study of all the shameful histories and misfortunes that befall poor women who become the prey of some brazen male, swaggering about with a well-lined purse. A girl is always corrupted by a man of her own class and station, he used to tell me. I could write entire volumes based on such observations. People blame wealthy men for plucking the flower of innocence from girls of the people. It is not true. The wealthy pay for a bouquet of already gathered flowers. They, of course, pluck them too, but these are blooms of a second flowering. The first blossom never falls to them. Remembering these words, I turned to my companion and burst out laughing. Why, I know your story. Your oarsman wasn't the first. Oh, Kitty, he was cross my heart. You're lying, pussycat. No, I'm not, I swear. You are lying. Confess, how did it really happen? She seemed astonished and hesitated. You see, I'm a sorcerer, a sleepwalker, my dear, I continued. If you don't tell me the truth, I'll hypnotize you, and it will all come out by itself. Being as foolish as all her kind, she grew frightened. How did you guess? She whispered. Come on, out with it. I insisted. Oh, well, the first time wasn't really anything. We had a local festival in our parts, and for the occasion, they hired a first-rate chef, Alexander. The moment he arrived, he started ordering everyone in the house about. He commanded both the master and the servants, just like a king. A tall, handsome man he was, and you could see he hated being stuck at the stove. He was forever barking, butter now, eggs, some Madeira, and everything had to be brought that very instant, on the double, or he'd fly into a rage and say such things you'd blush from head to toe. At the end of the day, he went out on the front steps to smoke his pipe. So I'm walking past him with a whole stack of plates, and he says to me, Come along, girl, down to the river. You can show me the sights here. Like a fool, I went, and no sooner had we reached the bank than he threw me down, and so quickly I didn't even understand what he was doing to me. I never saw him again after that. And that's all. I inquired. Oh, and I suspect Florentine is from him, she said, stammering. And who might Florentine be? He's my little boy. Ah, I see. Splendid. And you, of course, led your oarsman to believe he was the father of this Florentine. Well, yes. And he, I take it, had money? Yes, he settled an annuity of 300 francs on the boy. This story was beginning to amuse me. Bravo, my dear. Simply magnificent. I went on. You're not as stupid as people think, after all. And how old is Florentine now? He'll be 12 soon. He'll make his first communion in the spring. Delightful. So it was then that you took up this trade in earnest. She heaved a deep sigh. One does what one must, she said resignedly. A crash, coming from the same corner of the room, made me leap from the bed in an instant. It was the sound of falling body. Then the fallen one got up, clutching at the wall. Stunned and furious, I grabbed the candle and began to inspect the room. She too had jumped up and, trying to stop me, to hold me back, was muttering, "It's nothing, Kitty. Honestly, it's nothing at all." But I managed nonetheless to discover the source of this mysterious noise. I went straight to a wall cupboard, which was hidden by the head of the bed, flung it open, and saw a little boy, scrawny and pale, trembling with fear. He was sitting on the bottom of the cupboard, next to a large straw-seated chair from which he had fallen, and was looking at me with fright, his eyes wide and shining. When he saw me, he stretched his arms out to his mother and burst into tears. "It wasn't my fault, Mama. It wasn't my fault. I fell asleep, and I fell. Don't be angry, Mama. It wasn't my fault." I turned to the woman. "What is the meaning of this?" I asked. She was visibly embarrassed and upset. "What am I supposed to do you think?" she began, her voice faltering. "I can't earn enough to put him in a boarding house. The boy needs looking after, and obviously I can't afford to pay for an extra room. When I'm alone, he sleeps with me. If someone comes for an hour or two, he can sit in the cupboard. He sits quietly, he understands. Well, and when they stay the whole night, like you, he has to sleep on the chair, and his back gets so tired. He's just a child. It's not his fault, not one bit his fault. I like to see you try sleeping all night on a chair. You'd be singing a different tune then." She was agitated, angry, almost shouting, and the child kept on crying. Yes, he was an unhappy child, sickly and timid, truly a child of the cupboard, of that dark and cold cupboard. He was a child who could only occasionally warm himself a little in a bed that was briefly empty. I felt like crying myself.